So what is the real pandemic? There it is in 2 words. Narcissistic cynicism. So let's have a look at some narcissistic traits and some cynical traits and cross-relate them to how we were at school and how we were encouraged to be, how we survived, our survival mechanisms, the groupthink, the normality. Narcissists are easily led, and think about the so-called pandemic as well. Easily led, entitled, lazy. No research done by narcissists. Fake, empty inside, there you go. Out of body. Control freak, gaslight. Apparently in the current economic crisis, they can't even afford to gaslight you now. Bully. They bully. Hypocritical. Virtue signal. Envious. They say money is the root of all evil. I beg to differ. I think it's envy. Energy vampire. Easily offended. That's the woke agenda. Easily offended. You know it's narcissistic when you see how it operates. Amoral. Delusional. Transactional. You have to do something for them before they do anything for you. And if you manage to get anything out of them when you haven't reciprocated, they will spend the next 25 years reminding you. Transactional as opposed to interactional, where you don't care, you're not keeping tabs, you're not auditing. An auditor is actually an ideal narcissist, or vice versa, because they're keeping tabs. Corrupt. Or easily corruptible, or easily corrupted. Because they're amoral, they don't have a moral compass. That's why they have to latch onto you. You're the one with the moral compass, so you become their moral compass. And that's why they gaslight you if you show signs of individual sovereignty. And it can get even worse than that. Fixed mindset. You won't change them. They can't even change themselves. Once you know that they can't change themselves, how are you going to change them? There's so much energy being wasted on the people with growth mentality, freedom mentality, who have tried to change the narcissist and become a real cropper. Happened to me once. Won't do it again. And wasting time and energy. These are parasites, and they love it when you waste your time and energy. They love bomb then discard. Well, we've briefly mentioned that. They're in denial, and above all, they're in self-denial. They are not just righteous, but they're self-righteous, self-serving, self-obsessed, and above all, stupid. Because the globalists fit all these descriptions, we can rely on them to fuck it up. And all the things they're doing are now at one fuck up after another. And they're getting people like Biden to announce what they're doing. It's hysterical. And they're threatening to raid our homes if we're not eco-compliant. I mean, that's hysterical. That's just total gaslighting. That's never going to happen. That's a sign that they've lost it. They've lost it. They've gone. We've won. But that doesn't mean that shit isn't going to hit the fan, and more about that later. Lies. They lie. They lie. If they open their mouth, they're lying. They steal. They cheat. They're careless. Narcissists on a bicycle. Watch out. Really, they should have a hat with a big N on it, and then you just keep a distance. That would be ideal. Narcissist, CN, certified narcissist. Because they're dangerous. I know a narcissist that careered, there's that word again, careered into the back of a van. She went down the hill, into the back of the van, and blamed the van driver for not moving off. And she still blames the van driver. I said, how can you blame him? You ran into the back of him. He should have seen me coming. He was on red. And that's something, you can't talk to them. There's no rationale. They're in fear. That's the most compassionate thing we can say. They're just totally anxious and desperate, disconnected. And so everything that comes out of their mouth makes no sense to someone who's not a narcissist. Careless, blames, yet never their fault. It's always yours. Arrogant, presumptuous, infantile, because they never really grew up. That's part of the narcissism. They're trying to make up for the fact that they didn't grow. So they're pulling in as much as they can from other people. Zero grace, zero gratitude, zero love, zero humility, zero trust, zero remorse, zero self-reflection, zero self-responsibility, zero resilience, zero curiosity, You can be in a room, if you don't know them very well, and you want to test them out, sit in their company for a few hours, just check how many interesting, searching questions they ask you about you. Because my bet is that it will be a big, fat 0. If you want to check out who you're dealing with, just listen out for the questions. I don't mean, oh, how was your journey? That's not a searching personal question. Tell me about you. Tell me about your life. What does the future hold? And on the very, very, very rare occasions that they do ask a personal question, it's because they're fishing, they're transacting, they're trying to see what they could catch, they're fishing. They are absolute moral cowards. If they're told that it's a pandemic, they haven't done the research, and they've got Stockholm Syndrome, so it's a pandemic. And they go into fight or flight, so on come the masks and in go the jabs. And there's the narcissist. And of course, for them, you don't exist. Why would they ask you any questions about you if you don't exist? Very simple. We're so naive. Just because we feel we exist, we assume that they know we exist. How naive is that? And that's our problem. It's not their problem. They can't help the way they are, but we can. Now on to cynicism. The cynic is a materialist par excellence. Doesn't do spirit, doesn't do God. They're godless. When you die, that's it. That's the cynic speaking. Status obsessed. They don't feel of inherent value, so what they've done is clawed their way up the social ladder, and now they're proud of what they've achieved. And anyone who they feel has achieved more, they're the only one that they will take seriously in terms of opinions. If you are not seen to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner, forget it, you won't tell the cynic anything. They'll come down on you with the next one, which is hubris, because they're never wrong and they're never at fault. They're also permanently righteous, which means they permanently occupy the moral high ground. Anything you say is evidence of your guilt, your unworthiness compared to them. It's like in court when they say, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty? Well, if you know anything about neuro-linguistic programming, both guilty and not guilty equals guilty. Because the brain doesn't hear the not. They're asking you, like any narcissistic cynic would, are you guilty or guilty? Are you getting it yet? You see what's been done to us? The tentacles of the beast are everywhere. Defeatist. Oh, you can't change things. You're mad. That's why they call us nuts. Because we think we can change things. We know we can. But they don't believe it's possible. That alone creates a massive chasm between us. That alone. We know that we can create the reality that we can imagine and desire, but they have no faith in that whatsoever, which is why they sign up for the beast system. And at least 90%, and it's hurtling towards 100%, folks, which is why I'm on an emergency mission. At least 90% are in a state of sin. Now, sin is not the biblical sin. It's schooling-induced narcissism. Schooling-induced narcynicism. So narcynicism is that combination of narcissism and cynicism. Narcynicism. Schooling plus narcynicism equals the Stockholm Syndrome. So I like to create little simple formulae so that we can give our thoughts some references. Easy references. Stockholm Syndrome plus EMF radiation plus spike protein, if you believe in spike protein, or graphene oxide, or maybe both, equals... Now, just because I use the word doesn't mean that I necessarily believe that is the legal issue, because I actually believe that people are dying of ignorance. So that's not murder, that's a form of suicide. I would say that what's going on at the moment anyway is closer to suicide than murder. That's just my opinion. People not taking enough care, then it's reckless suicide. But I don't think there is such a thing, to be honest. It has to be intentional. But that's where I am on the spectrum. I do think that people are opting out. They're not being murdered. Sometimes they are in the case of old people's homes. Murders are taking place. But I'm talking generally about the population. who are out there free, not in a home, being pathwayed to death, given a good death, who are an exception. I think that is definitely a case of murder, or manslaughter, corporate manslaughter at the very least. But for people out there rolling up their sleeves voluntarily, I think it's closer to suicide. And a French High Court judge was of that opinion a couple of years ago. Now the intention is clearly... So you have to have mens rea, which is the illegal or malicious intent. But remember that the rollout is being given by the terminally stupid, who are just following orders, and they don't have malicious intent. So there's a breakdown of the chain of causation. I don't want to go into that in too much detail, but you can see where I'm going with that. Narcynicism in action, teacher that's never wrong, social worker that steals children, gives them up to the global trafficking cartels, parent that abandons their children or boy or girl offspring in school, teachers who strike and say, it's for the kids. Well, indirectly it is, but they wouldn't believe me if I did the calculations for them, because it's a bit like the Israeli doctors. When the Israeli doctors went on strike, the death rate in Israel went down. Similarly, if teachers go on strike, depression in kids goes down. You know, during the summer holidays in America, they did studies. The psychiatric admissions for children during school summer holidays goes right down. Anyone who conforms to insane rules for a quiet life is a narcynic in action. Anyone who puts career before truth, which is most people, to be honest. Teacher who will use threats and coercion to maintain discipline and control. Anyone who calls conspiracy theory when you speak truth or refer to facts. Anyone who cannot take responsibility for themselves. Anyone that never asks why. The doctor that thinks that writing a prescription after a 5-minute Google search is practicing medicine. Doctor that tells you that your post-vax symptoms are in your head. I mean, if that isn't the most evil form of gaslighting, I don't know what is. Scientist that blames human activity for climate crisis. Politician who never actually answers a question. I used to think it's because they were a politician. Now I know it's because they're narcissistic cynics who actually happen to be politicians. The doctor who euthanizes your parent for their own good. The patient that thinks getting a prescription means success against a disease. Because they're used to running out of school with a certificate, so they run out of the doctors with a certificate. They think they've won the lottery. That's how dumbed down we are, folks. The teacher who announces their sexuality to their geography class. Hello, I'm Gail and I'm a lesbian. Excuse me, miss, but how relevant is that? Shut up. You can't ask questions. You see where they're going with this. Teacher who is happy to use graphic sexual language and material with children of any age. Anyone who looks up at the sky and only sees vapor trails. Judge who regards a case as entirely without merit when the government narrative is challenged. Anyone who blames the unvaxxed for the vax being jabbed, and they've done that, you know. Blaming us because they got jabbed. They blame us. That, again, delicious example of gaslighting. Anyone who thinks the police only arrest bad people. Anyone who insists that the CV jab saved millions of lives. Anyone who thinks carbon is an environmental threat. How retarded do you have to be to think that? Or corrupt. Anyone who cannot argue with as they self-identify as always right and always righteous. Things you won't hear a narcynic say. I fucked up, please forgive me. I need to do more research. What's your opinion? Tell me why you think that. Tell me what makes you tick. The science is never settled. My body is my temple and a self-healing miracle. Things you'll always hear an narcynic say. Life's shit, then you die. It's the law. And we now know that that needs turning on its head. Watch other videos for more details. Do as you're told or you'll be sorry. Are you legally or medically qualified? I follow the science. Just doing my job or following orders. Why would the government lie? So there's the meme that's got people queuing up for pills and surgery under the banner of quick fix, no self-responsibility, no thorough research, not interested in solving my own issues or even looking at my own issues. Lifestyle change, which is all it takes to heal, including change of mind, etc. No one queuing up. Now, in this environment, if I did a talk on how to avoid paying your mortgage, I would get 1,000 people turn up. But when I do a talk on what's been done to you and how to search your soul for the solutions, I get quite a bit fewer than 1,000. That's evidence of what the schooling system has done. State schooling is a process of subhumanization. Spiritual subhumanization involves disconnection from source. Mental subhumanization involves intellectual retardation. Because we are more retarded than our ancestors, that's a fact. What you now do at university in maths, calculus, you could do as a 13-year-old in the 19th century. We are nowhere near as intelligent as our ancestors. Nowhere near. Plus the fact that they knew about herbs and spices and natural remedies. Nowadays, kids now can't even recognise a cucumber. They take a potato home to their mother and then, what's that? You think I'm exaggerating? These are real stories from real lives. People cannot recognise a potato, or even if they can, they don't know what to do with it. Emotional zero empathy, so emotional subhumanization. Physical subhumanization, vulnerable, sedentary, weak. Socio-political subhumanization, self-righteous. And moral subhumanization, virtue signalling and snitching at the first opportunity. Take a human and add schooling. We now know you get a subhuman narcynic or subhuman narcynicism. Take a human and leave the schooling out, and you'll get what Mary Rodwell in her book New Humans calls new human. I call them crystals. They're ready. They don't need anything from us. In fact, the less we give them, the better. Leave them alone, the new crystal generation. They're ready to bring in the new earth because they've got infinite imagination, infinite potential. You send them to school, you're committing a crime. Subhuman plus artificial intelligence gives you transhuman. You can't just make people transhuman. You have to subhumanize them first and then offer them the route back to superhumanity via the software. And they'll take it. These narcissistic youngsters will want the superhuman powers and they'll be prepared to take the jab to get the software in them that means they can speak fluent Chinese in 10 seconds, or black belt karate, or whatever. They're not interested in going through the learning process. They just want the instant ability. So we have a being of infinite potential and growth, or infinite potential growth, starts out on the schooling ladder, hits the system, which is the black cube. There's more to this than meets the eye, the black cube. I haven't got time to go into that. Which then means that their infinite potential is starting to grey out, just as mine did. So that system is the immovable object. And so it's greying you around the edges. And then eventually, it's got you, and you're now the narcissistic cynic. And if the system does a real job on you, you could even be a transhuman narcissistic cynic. There's a bonus.